we talked about how Florida State wants to join the SEC. And now it looks like the Big Ten is going to take Washington and Oregon and get a discounted price because they leverage them. I don't think Southern California and UCLA are happy because they wanted to be the only teams on the West Coast in the Big Ten. The Big Ten suddenly, when I thought it looked silly by taking the Trojans and the Bruins, looks pretty darn smart because you could have a Big Ten West and a Big Ten East. What does that mean for the SEC? Just may not be interested in expanding. Could they take FSU and Clemson at a discount? I don't know that they can get out of that ACC contract, but I thought the SEC looked way smarter by taking Oklahoma and Texas as opposed to Southern California and UCLA. Now, if the Big Ten nabs Washington and Oregon at a discount, and by a discount, they don't get an equal share of the conference money. That's what I mean by that. Kudos, Big Ten. Kudos, Big Ten. You've run the game. If you can have, what would it be, a 18-team league that has a West
league, and they're
West
not
and
done.
an East, a West
Yes.
and an East. And you better be careful, SEC, because if you don't go sew up Clemson and Florida State and they find a way to get out of that terrible ACC television contract that lasts like for another 6-8 years that they can't get out of, if they get out of that and you don't sew them up, I have no reason to think the Big Ten's not going to gobble them up. You are on the verge suddenly just within the past couple of days. We're talking about mega conference. The mega conference might be the Big Ten. I don't want to say the SEC is ever going to be left out of the party, but the biggest party is going to be in the Big Ten if you're not careful, SEC.
Yeah, it's funny. So what I was reading today, and by the way, in real time, I want to point this out, guys. Pete Thamel and Heather Dinich are reporting that Pac-12 is unable to land the plane with its media rights deal with Apple TV because of this last-minute push that the Big Ten is making. It's as we're talking right now, the Pac-12, the 100-year-old conference, is dying and may be dead by the end of the day. It may dissolve by the end of the day.
Yes, if you're watching this on Sunday, this may be slightly dated because it very well. This is happening. I said days yesterday. This is hours.
Yes, it's hours. And the SEC has thought. So one of the things they've weighed, Dave, is adding Florida State and Clemson. That's two more schools to pay out. Now those two schools bring in a lot of revenue, but one of the things they've weighed is, what if we just played a lot more conference games rather than add teams? And that could, what if we played like 11 SEC games, or what if they just went exclusive and just played all SEC teams the whole year? And they thought maybe that brings in more money.
I'm down with that. Listen, and I know in particular Tom gets frustrated with me. I want the NFL model. I want there to every game. I'm a Cowboys fan, but I know they could lose each and every week. I don't care if they're playing the worst team. And that's the case. The Chiefs always drop a game they shouldn't early in the season. That's the case every week. You don't have the Texas El Pasos that you go beat up on. That goodness knows I've sat through the press box and I've thought, man, when will this game be over? And I'm sure, Caleb, you've been at home and you flipped to another game for a moment. You don't need that anymore. And 9-3 can be a good enough season to get in the playoffs. This old mindset of you have to be undefeated or close to it to win a championship. Where else does that exist, Caleb?
Dave, you and I are going to break on that. I think it's what made college football so special, though. Every Saturday mattered more than anything else. It was the most beautiful thing.
No, I agree. I don't want to devalue the regular season much. Okay, but just a little bit to make for an exciting college football playoff. There should be no 4-loss team in the playoff, and a 3-loss team should have to need some good fortune to get in. So I'm not like totally devaluing. I hope you see that. I'm not talking about expanding to 16 games or anything.
Like, the greatest game I ever watched, and I don't know if you feel this way, the most exciting college football game I ever watched was 2013 Alabama-Auburn. Nothing will top that, the kick six return. That is the greatest moment to me in college football history. That's not the greatest moment in college football history if there's a 12-team playoff, because both teams get into playoff anyway and nobody cares who lost. And
well, you do have you discount more than I do the home field advantage and the bye week. So the way they've instituted it, and I criticize the NCAA more than anybody, Caleb, But the way they put it together, well, it's not even the NCAA, it's the College Football Playoff Committee, but the way they put it together where there is still things to be gained with the late wins in the season, I think they've remedied that. Do you not agree?
Somewhat.
I mean, what if the loser of that game doesn't get a bye and has to go on the road? That game still means a lot.
Well, I agree with you on that. It's just, it wouldn't, like, when you look back on it in history, it wouldn't have the same impact that it has right now. When we look back on that game, it's like sacred the way that game ended and the way we feel about it. Now, getting back to the point with the SEC, I want to know your thoughts. Even if the SEC thinks they're better off doing that, do you think it's time that they go ahead and try to raid the ACC because they don't want the Big Ten in their area? Do they need to go ahead and get Florida State, Clemson, even Miami, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech and Virginia just to keep the Big Ten out?
And I guarantee you they're doing the Godfather stuff behind the scenes where they're pushing Florida State. I guarantee that in some shape or form, the SEC was behind. Remember when they basically the only out of the contract was for there to be no members of the contract. So they tried to have a mutiny. I think it was they had to have 8 of 12 teams. I think
they need 8 of 14.
I think the SEC's pushing behind the scenes, but they don't want that out because Florida sure doesn't want Florida State in the SEC. South Carolina sure. Yeah, they don't want Miami either. South Carolina doesn't want Clemson in the SEC. So you go up and down the line. There are a lot of people who don't want that. So I think the SEC has been all along pushing behind quiet channels. You know, you just make the phone call and you say, well, if you could get out of that contract, we'd love to have you, Florida State. You make the
same. They would have to promise it to 8 teams, though.
Well,
unless the SEC colludes with the Big 12 and the Big 12 agrees to promise it to some teams too, because I don't think the SEC cares if the Big 12 is in their area. They do care if the Big 10's in their area.
Here's the thing that I think works. I think that you call the ones you want and you say there's a home for you. And then those teams like North Carolina calls Wake and says, hey, we need to figure a way to get out of this or we're going to be left holding the bag. Wake, are you going to get in the SEC? Probably not, but you don't want to be an independent. I mean, you don't want to be all there.
You call NC State. You call NC State and Duke. You don't call Wake. Wake's the last. Wake will be left holding.
Well, no, I'm saying if you're North Carolina, you call Wake. I want to give you a heads up. We're going to make this push to blow up the ACC. So you need to find a home. So what I was trying to answer is you don't make a home for 8 teams. You make a home for the teams you want, and you hope by it falling apart that it filters down and other teams jump on board. That was my point.
Well, yeah, but see, right now those other teams have no incentive to kill this grant of rights deal because they're at least stuck in a safe conference until 2036. So I think you got to give. I think what you need is you need to collude with the Big 12. So the SEC gives North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, and Virginia Tech a call and be like, there's a home. And then they collude with the Big 12 to call Virginia, NC State, maybe Miami, Georgia Tech, somebody like that, and say, hey, if you guys give them a home, we'll give these schools a home. And both of our conferences are strong then. Because I don't think the SEC cares if the Big 12 is in their market. They care if the Big 10 is in their market. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. That's why I said that about Miami. Miami's not my first choice to add to the SEC, but it is because I know that the Big 10 would take them because they believe in television markets. And that's what, number 3 in the nation? And
I thought it was top 10. It may be number 3, but this is why they need to add a North Carolina and Virginia school now. You don't want the Big 10 to get into North Carolina and Virginia before you ever got into North Carolina and Virginia when you are the SEC, Southeastern Conference, and you're all about congruency.
And Rocky Top Tom, I love your opinions and I respect your opinions. And there was a time where I was a traditionalist and I thought the same way. But I realize that's where we are headed. So why not do it right? Don't bumble into this. Go ahead and do it right. If you're the SEC, be aggressive, be willing to expand. I think everybody's a little bit scared. I think everybody's a little bit scared about what's your legacy going to be in college football if you're Greg Sankey or you're the commissioner of the Big Ten and you push this to happen. Well, what is your legacy going to be? I saw a Twitter clip where Bill Walton was talking about, The new the new Pac-12 commissioner is going to lead us to great championships and great things. And this was about 3 years ago. He was on College Game Day, and I'm thinking, oops. Because
and Bill Walton is doing that as a UCLA fan, one of the schools that blew up the Pac-12.
Right. And and that's that guy's legacy. I can't remember his name, the Pac-12 commissioner. His legacy is that I thought it was somebody that replaced Larry Scott. Is it Larry Scott?
But it's somebody that replaced Scott. Yes, it's the one who blew up, but Larry Scott's going to be the one to get all the blame for this. And
well, that's his legacy. Whereas a Roy Kramer, his legacy was creating a unified champion. A Mike Slav, I thought he cleaned up the league. And the Big Ten commissioner now, I don't know his name off the top of my head. His legacy is going to be he brought a lot of television money, and he got Southern California and UCLA involved. So we all have this legacy, and I think everybody's scared about their legacy. And at this point, legacy be darned. It's going to end up where this is a semi-pro sport. It already is, and it needs the structure involved.